A Werewolf shifter romance audiobook written by Katherine Stewart. Prologue. The hum beneath his skin, an ancient, restless beast. It had been there for centuries, a low thrum against his bones, a constant reminder of the chaos he contained. Tonight, it resonated differently, a sharper, more insistent rhythm, mirroring the distant throb of the moon. He stood by the vast, unadorned window of his highest tower. Below, the kingdom lay muted, a distant tapestry of lights. He rarely looked upon it. His presence was a shroud, a necessary shadow. The mask, cold and heavy against his face, was more than armor. It was a cage. Without it, the power would rage, a firestorm of cosmic energy, yearning to unmake. He knew this truth in his blood, in the faint ethereal runes that pulsed beneath his skin, aching for release. A tremor, through the stone walls, a mere ghost of vibration. It wasn't an earthquake, it was him, a surge of frustration, a flicker of raw impatience at the endless isolation. The power responded, a wild beast testing its leash. The very air crackled. A faint scent of ozone, like a storm about to break, filled his lungs. He gritted his teeth, forced the chaos back, contained the destructive tendrils before they could touch the ancient artifacts, before they could shatter the glass or crack the very foundations of his fortress. It was a battle. Every waking moment, every restless dream. A low, rumbling sigh. So tired. He had lived for lifetimes, burdened by this gift, this curse, the legacy of his bloodline. Others before him had cracked under the strain, unleashing devastation that echoed through the annals of the realm. He refused to be another failure. He kept the mask on, kept his emotions locked down, kept the world at bay. It was the only way. Yet, tonight, something was different. The hum wasn't just raw power. It was a low, insistent song, a vibration that spoke of completion. A flicker of a forgotten prophecy brushed the edges of his mind. The Omega, the anchor, the one who would either bring harmonious balance or the ultimate unraveling. He'd scoffed at it for generations, seen it as a dangerous delusion. But the hum persisted, a deep, magnetic pull, terrifying him more than any power surge, a tremor, stronger than the last. The tower shook. His breath hitched. A guttural sound, a low grrr-roll, tore from his throat. The mask felt too tight, too constricting. The power within thrashed, not in anger, but in anticipation. No, his ancient will fought the primal urge. Not yet, never. For he knew the truth. The one that haunted his every waking moment. His very existence was a precarious balance. And if his love for her, this fated, devastating connection, were to truly awaken, it could shatter everything. The whispers in the ancient texts were clear. The love of the alpha of his line, unanchored, was the spark of cataclysm. He only knew how to contain. He did not know how to love, without destruction. His world trembled. The echoes of ancient blood. The hum in my skull was an old friend, a buzzing guest I wished would leave. And just like that, everything felt off. Usually, the smells of damp earth and stale desperation in the lower city market settled my nerves. But not today. My fingers, stained green from crushing mint for the herbal salves, trembled slightly. Meanwhile, the market was a thick blanket of unwashed bodies, cheap incense, and overripe fruit. I hugged myself, trying to disappear behind my small stall. The dried herbs, my only shield, felt flimsy against the bustling chaos. It wasn't the usual fear, you see. Not just the worry of being spotted as an unmarked Omega, because that was always a problem in a city that prized and exploited us. This was different. This was deeper. What followed was a sharp, blinding pain, right behind my eyes. It was a familiar feeling, a bad song that meant visions were coming. I hated them. Still, the market sounds twisted, then died into a low, rumbling roar. Then, My sight blurred into angry reds and deep, consuming purples. As the world narrowed, a vision slammed into me. Two golden eyes burned into my sight, big, scary, like a hungry animal, but also strangely sad. They stared from a dark, empty space. And then, a raw, wild feeling, thick with the smell of ozone and blood, squeezed me tight, like it wanted to swallow me whole. My breath hitched. I gasped, a little sound lost in the noisy crowd. Just like that, the vision snapped back, leaving me shaking. That strange ozone smell clung to my nose, even though the market smelled only of sweat and old spices. Just a migraine, I told myself, trying to make myself believe the lie. Always just a migraine, because admitting it was more. That would be truly terrifying. Eventually, my little brother, Kyle, tugged on my sleeve. He was a wisp of a boy, too thin. "Aria, you look pale." His innocent worry twisted my gut. He didn't know about the scary pictures in my head. Truth be told, I didn't want him to know. Later that night, huddled in our small, shared room above a bakery, the smell of warm bread usually helped me sleep. Not tonight. I heard my Aunt Alara and Uncle Gareth. Their whispers were low, full of fear. "The Purge is coming early this year," Alara said, her voice rough. "They're calling all Omegas, hunting for the unclaimed, especially those of the blood." The words felt like heavy stones dropping into my chest, sinking me down. And just like that, a coldness, not from the night air, crawled up my back. The golden eyes from my vision seemed to burn behind my own eyelids. We were out of time. What's worse, the wardens had been more active, sweeping through our district like shadows. The weight of survival. The sun, usually warm and friendly, felt like a harsh light shining on me as I stepped into the upper market. It made me feel exposed. On the other hand, this part of the city was cleaner. It buzzed with a different kind of tension. The sharp want of rich traders and the casual pride of alphas in fine silks. My hand held tight to a small cloth bag of my best healing salves. Maybe, just maybe, if I sold enough, we could afford that tiny, quiet cottage on the edge of the woods. It would be a better shield than these old, crumbling brick walls. Safety. The word tasted like a dream I'd almost forgotten. Maybe it was fate, this desperate need for a real home. Eventually, a loud, angry shout ripped through the air, right from a stall nearby. A big alpha merchant, his face red like a beet, was yelling at a skinny vendor over a perceived slight. I flinched, pulling my shoulders in. My Omega empathy, which was usually just a soft hum, exploded. It hit me like a punch. I felt the alpha's huge anger, hot and sharp. I felt the skinny vendor's crushing fear, like a heavy stone. And the bitter feelings of the people watching, they all slammed into me. Not only that, it was a messy mix of feelings that made me dizzy. I stumbled, bumping into a big guard. The moment my skin touched his arm, I was swamped with his tiredness, his resentment, his desperate longing for a drink. I pulled back fast. A tiny whimper caught in my throat. Nobody heard it. Too much, I thought. Always too much. Because this constant feeling of other people's sadness and worry, it was so tiring. Meanwhile, I saw a young Omega girl, probably my age, with a proud alpha next to her. She looked happy. Safe. Her hand rested on his arm, and his smile seemed to be just for her. It made my chest ache. I wondered what it would be like to have that, to be truly seen and protected instead of just hidden. I felt a pang of jealousy, a quick, sharp twist in my gut. Because of that, I hurried away, back to my stall, trying to push away that unwanted feeling. My own longing was a dangerous spark. Soon after, the awful truth came crashing down. My Aunt Alara's voice was rough with tears, and Uncle Gareth's face was white and tired. "Aria," Alara choked, the landlord knows about your status." She sniffled. "He's demanding money we don't have. Or He'll tell the wardens. Gareth added, his eyes not meeting mine. There's a broker. He offered a way out for omegas like you at the midnight auction. The words hit me like physical blows. My breath hitched, caught in my throat. The auction. A terrible place. Everyone whispered about it. Omegas were sold there. They often just disappeared. My blood ran cold. The cottage, my dream of safety, crumbled into dust. My family's tear-filled eyes, their desperate hope, were a silent, crushing plea. I had no choice. The invisible chains tightened around me. As the silence stretched, I knew my life was about to change forever. The unthinkable transaction. The carriage wasn't fancy, but it was sneaky. Too sneaky. And just like that, I felt like a bird trapped in a velvet cage. Inside, the soft seats felt like ropes binding me. The darkness outside pushed in, making it hard to breathe. I sat stiffly, my hands squeezed tight in my lap. My knuckles were white. The broker, a fat man with surprisingly quiet steps, picked me up at sunset. His smile was plain, but it promised a better life. Still, his eyes only shined with greed. The smell of fear, my fear, was thick in the small space. It tasted like ash in my mouth. It mixed with the sweet, fake smell of his expensive cologne. My stomach churned. I tried to talk, to beg, to make a deal. But my words got lost in the quiet velvet of the carriage. Please, I whispered to the broker. My voice trembled. I can work. I can serve. Just not the auction. He just smiled bigger, his lips curving like a predator's. His voice lost its plainness, becoming chillingly happy. Sweet child, your worth is exactly because of what you are, not what you do. Not only that, your family line, your ancient blood, it's special. There are certain collectors who pay a lot of money for purity, for rarity. His eyes paused on my neck, where the mark would go. The unspoken threat in his voice sent a fresh wave of terror through me. My breath caught. I was just something to be sold. A thing. The bitter taste of it filled my mouth, making me want to gag. Maybe this was fate. Or maybe it was just a cruel joke. Deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't about saving my family anymore. It was about sacrificing me. Because of that, a cold emptiness spread through my chest. What's worse, the whispers I'd heard about the midnight auction flooded my mind. Stories of omegas never returning, of alphas so powerful they were more beast than man. I clutched my hands tighter. The very air felt thin now. Eventually, the carriage slowed down. The dull rumble of its wheels changed to a soft crunch of tiny stones. A quiet, deep hum vibrated through the carriage floor. It wasn't the distant city noise. It was something else. Something old and mighty. I peeked through a small, dirty window. I saw a huge, dark building. Its big gates were barely visible against the bruised twilight sky. The air felt heavy, pregnant with expectation and dread. The smell of ozone, light but real, tickled my nose. It was just like the strange vision I had this morning. The carriage stopped with a jolt. The broker's hand, strong like a vice, touched my arm. "Welcome, little Omega," he whispered, his voice oozing satisfaction. "To the midnight auction." Just like that, the door swung open. It pushed me out into the scary glow of torches and the oppressive hum of 1,000 silent fears. My heart skipped a beat. My life, as I knew it, was over. The midnight auction. The stench of desperation hit me first. A thick, cloying smell that clung to the air like dust. And just like that, I was inside. It was worse than I ever imagined. The auction hall wasn't grand. It was cold. Stone walls, tall and unforgiving, swallowed the light from the few sputtering torches. The air was heavy, packed with unspoken fear. Omegas stood in rows, their faces pale, their eyes wide and lost, because they knew what came next. Alphas, draped in furs and silks, stalked among them, their gazes like hungry wolves. I felt their greedy urges, their casual power. My empathy, always a curse, screamed in my head. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird. "Don't look at me," I prayed, a silent mantra. "Please, just don't look." Soon after, a sharp bang echoed through the hall. The auctioneer, a man with a voice like scraping stones, began his cold, quick chant. Each word hammered another nail into my coffin. Omegas were presented, their features listed like fine horses. Some cried, some stood numb. I felt their terror. It was a suffocating blanket. And then, without warning, the entire hall fell silent. It wasn't a sudden quiet. No, it was a deep, consuming hush that felt like the world itself was holding its breath. What followed was a drop in temperature, making goosebumps rise on my arms. The scent of raw earth and lightning, so familiar from my visions, prickled my nose. My breath hitched. Into the silence, he came. The masked king. He moved like a shadow, long and impossibly tall, his figure barely a shape in the flickering light. He wore no fancy robes, no glittering crown, just dark, plain clothes that seemed to swallow the light. A mask, smooth, dark, and utterly featureless, covered his face. No eyes, no mouth, just an empty, terrifying void. He carried no guards. No one dared approach him because his very presence spoke of ancient, untamed power. My Omega instincts screamed at me to run, to hide, to simply cease to exist. But then, a strange, undeniable pull started in my gut. A low hum. It wasn't fear alone. No, it was something else. A curious, dangerous thrum that made my pulse race. He moved slowly, a silent predator. His gaze, even though masked, felt like a physical touch, burning my skin. It swept over the Omegas, dismissing each one with a quiet, powerful presence. My knees almost buckled. And then, his masked gaze locked onto me. My world tilted. It was like a black hole had opened and pulled me in. I couldn't breathe. His head tilted just a fraction. He didn't speak. He didn't bid. He simply pointed. His finger, long and unmoving, aimed right at me. A single, chilling gesture. The auctioneer's voice, usually booming, sounded small, almost scared. "Sold. To the king." I knew what that meant. My worst fears were coming true. And just like that, my life was over, the Alpha's claim. Before I could move, two silent, hulking figures in dark cloaks grabbed my arms. They were not gentle. Their grip was like iron bands, pulling me forward, dragging me towards the king. My meager resistance was useless. I couldn't scream. My throat was too tight. All I could feel was pure, cold terror. I looked at the masked figure, towering over me. His presence was so heavy, it felt like the air itself was crushing me. I could almost hear the whispers from the crowd behind me, a mix of pity and morbid fascination. What would he do? He didn't speak. He didn't even make a sound. His hand, large and gloved, reached out. It wasn't a gentle touch. It was a possessive grasp, his fingers closing around my neck. The air around him shimmered faintly, a dark, almost purple light. Then, without mercy, his head dipped. I felt the sharp, piercing bite on my shoulder. It wasn't just a physical wound. It was a fire blooming beneath my skin, a searing pain that shot through every nerve. My body tensed, my muscles locked up. I wanted to fight. I wanted to tear free. But then, a strange thing happened. Instead, a rush of something else, something primal, intoxicating, and undeniably powerful flooded my veins. My body, on instinct, arched into his touch. My Omega cried out, not in pain, but in surrender, even as my mind screamed in terror. It was a deep, vibrating hum that started at the mark and spread through me like wildfire. And just like that, I felt a new connection. A strange, animalistic yearning for his touch that shamed and confused me. It was raw. It was undeniable. My mark pulsed with a strange energy, a living thing, The pain faded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of his presence, his power. It was like a tidal wave washing over me, filling every part of me. It was too much. The scent of ozone and blood so strong overwhelmed my senses. I felt a chaotic surge of power inside me, not my own, but his, filling me to bursting. What followed was a dizzying spin, like the world was turning upside down. I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred. A flash of gold eyes filled my sight, burning against the darkness behind my eyelids. They were the same eyes from my nightmares. But now, they were everywhere. My strength left me. My legs buckled. My last conscious thought was the overwhelming weight of his presence, the chilling sense of being utterly claimed. And just like that, darkness closed in, pulling me into a deep, dreamless sleep. Awakening to a new nightmare. The first thing I felt was velvet, soft against my cheek. Then the silence. Not the noisy silence of the auction, but a deep, heavy quiet that felt unnatural. It was like being swallowed whole by a very expensive blanket. Slowly, my eyes fluttered open. I was in a bed, a huge bed, covered in dark, rich fabrics. The air smelled of old wood, something metallic, and his faint, primal scent, like ancient earth after a storm. I was in the king's fortress. And just like that, the memory of the auction, of the bite, slammed into me. My mark pulsed, a low, persistent thrumming against my skin. It felt hot, alive. I touched it. It was still there, a raised, burning pattern on my shoulder. A deep ache settled in my chest. I sat up, my limbs heavy. This room was beautiful, really. But it felt wrong. It was too perfect. Too quiet. Like a cage made of gold. There were heavy tapestries on the walls, dark and old. Big, tall windows were covered with thick drapes, letting in only a sliver of light. My heart pounded. I had to get out. I crept to the door, my bare feet silent on the cold marble floor. I pushed, locked. I tried another, locked too. I looked out the window, high up, too high. I was trapped. Deep down, I knew the truth. My life as Aria Vale, the hidden Omega, was gone. It had ended at that auction. Now I was just his. What was he going to do with me? I didn't know what scared me more, the idea of him or the not knowing. Soon after, the door clicked open. I flinched. A silent servant entered. She was an older woman, dressed in simple gray. She carried a tray with food, warm bread, sweet fruit. But her eyes never met mine, not once. She moved like a ghost, fast and quiet. Her face was pale, tight with fear. She set the tray down on a small table, then hurried out, closing the door softly. Her fear, I felt it, like a cold hand squeezing my own heart. It was a heavy, suffocating cloud around her. Even so, she was more afraid of him than of me. I picked up a warm roll, but the smell of it made my stomach twist. I wasn't hungry. My focus sharpened. My goal changed. Escape was impossible right now. My new goal was to understand, to survive, to figure out who this masked king was and why he had chosen me. My body moved on instinct, walking to the windows, searching for clues, trying to find a weakness. I would not break. No matter how hard she tried, she wouldn't. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach. But now, it was mixed with a new, tiny spark of defiance. I wouldn't be a victim forever. My quest for answers had just begun. The silent fortress. The first few days were a blur of numb quiet. Still, the velvet soft bed did not offer comfort. Every breath I took, I felt the heavy weight of the king's castle pressing down. It was huge. It felt old. And just like that, it was my prison. My mark, nestled on my shoulder, felt hot, alive, a constant whisper against my skin. It pulsed, a low, persistent thrumming that made me feel more connected to this place than I wanted. What followed was a wave of new feelings. My senses, sharpened by the mark, picked up everything. The air itself tasted like ancient dust, and something metallic, like old blood, and of course, his faint, wild scent, like deep, dark earth after a storm. Eventually, I started to explore. My bare feet made no sound on the cold marble floors. This wing of the castle was beautiful, really. But it was so quiet, too quiet, like a giant, fancy tomb. Tapestries, old and dark, covered the walls, showing scenes of grim battles and forgotten heroes. Why were they here? I wondered. There were servants, too, moving like ghosts. They never looked at me. Not once. If I tried to speak, they would flinch, or just keep their eyes on the floor, their bodies stiff with fear. It was like they were made of stone, because they wouldn't respond to me. I could feel their fear, a cold, prickly feeling that wrapped around me like a shroud. It was all for him. I walked the long, empty halls, pushing open doors that opened to empty rooms, all grand, all silent. My goal was simple: to understand, to figure out the rules of this strange, quiet cage. Because if I knew the rules, maybe I could find a way out. Or at least, a way to survive. Deep down, I knew the truth. I was scared, really scared. But the fear was changing. It was like a tiny, hot spark in my gut, mixing with a growing sense of defiance. I wasn't going to just sit and wait. No matter how hard she tried, she wouldn't. This quiet castle wouldn't break me. On the other hand, the silence wasn't quite total. Sometimes a distant creak would echo, or a faint whisper of wind. But then, it would always be followed by something else, a deep, heavy growl. It was too low to be human. It vibrated through the very stones of the castle, making the floor hum under my feet. It wasn't a loud growl, but it was felt, like a warning. It was the king's presence, a force I felt rather than heard, a constant reminder that I was his. It seemed to tell me to stay inside, to stay put. And just like that, my sense of freedom, already so small, shrunk even more. His scent, a complex mix of earth and something untamed, seemed to follow me. It was everywhere. It was a constant reminder. First glimpses of the king's power. The next few days were a blur of silent observation. I ate the food the ghost-like servants brought. It was always good food, but I had little appetite. And then, I saw him. My first direct glimpse of the masked king. It was from afar. He was walking along a high, open walkway in the distance, overseeing something in a courtyard far below. He was a towering shadow, even from that distance. His mask, dark and featureless, seemed to absorb the light, making him appear even more menacing. My heart skipped a beat. My body went cold. But then, my fear started to mix with something else. Intense curiosity. I couldn't look away. I watched him. He didn't shout. He didn't gesture wildly. His commands were unspoken. A subtle tilt of his head, a slight shift in his posture, and his guards, huge alphas themselves, moved instantly, silently, because they were terrified. His power was a thick cloak around him, pressing down on everything. I could feel it. A low hum in the air that tightened my chest. It felt dangerous. So dangerous. What followed was a moment that made my breath catch. A sudden flicker. It was faint, but I saw it. A shimmering, unstable energy rippled from his masked form. It pulsed with a dark, purplish light. And just like that, the very stone railing near him seemed to crack. A small hairline fracture spread across the ancient stone like a spider web. Then the air thickened. It became heavy, like before a storm. He made no sound. He just stood there, radiating this raw, uncontrolled power. It was terrifying to see. And it was terrifying to feel because my mark throbbed in response. That night, the dreams started, vivid, unsettling. It wasn't my dreams. They were his. I saw images of vast, empty landscapes. I felt crushing loneliness. I saw flashes of ancient symbols and felt a desperate struggle to control something immense, something wild. His power, it was always there, pressing down. I felt his profound sadness, a deep ocean of sorrow that echoed in my own heart. The scent of ozone and something akin to his despair permeated the dream. I woke up with a gasp, drenched in sweat. The golden eyes from my old visions, they were everywhere in these dreams. And just like that, I understood. The dreams weren't just dreams. They were memories. His memories. My mark pulsed with a hot, insistent beat. It felt like it was pulling me, tugging me towards him, even though I feared him more than anything. The hum from my mark was louder now. It wasn't just a pulse, it was a pull. A soft, steady tug. And then, a new feeling started in my belly. A quiet curiosity, like a whisper. It guided me. My feet moved on their own, taking me through corridors I hadn't noticed before, down twisting stairs that felt secret. I knew I shouldn't. But something deep inside me, a part of my omega, urged me forward. It was like following an invisible string. Eventually, I found it. A heavy, unmarked wooden door, almost hidden behind a dusty tapestry. I pushed the door open. It creaked. The air inside was still and cold, smelling of old parchment and forgotten things. This room wasn't grand. It was small. It felt sacred, ancient. What followed was a wall covered in faded tapestries. They showed masked figures just like the king, but with different symbols. There were circles, lines, and strange shapes that looked like stars and swirling galaxies. And then, there were terrifying scenes. Scenes of light shattering, of lands breaking apart, of people screaming under a sky filled with chaotic energy. The cataclysm. The old man's whispers echoed in my head. I touched a scroll. It was brittle, almost turning to dust. And then, I heard it. A quiet cough. My heart leaped into my throat. I spun around. Standing in the doorway was an old woman. Her hair was white like snow, her face lined like an old map. She was one of the silent servants, but her eyes held a strange, sad wisdom. She didn't look scared of me. She looked resigned. "You should not be here, child," she whispered, her voice like rustling leaves. "This place, it holds too much truth." She looked at my mark. Her gaze was not fearful, but piercing. "The mark. It draws you, doesn't it? As it always has." She sighed, a deep, tired sound. "Our king, he is burdened by a terrible power, one that threatens to unravel our world. His love for omegas. It makes it worse. It could destroy everything. It is the catalyst." She spoke of my ancient blood, of the Great Conjunction, of how it was a prophecy, a power that needed balance or it would tear everything apart. She talked of past failures, omegas who tried but could not hold the balance. I felt a cold dread spread through me. It wasn't just him. It was us, my blood, my mark. Deep down, I knew the truth. I was part of this terrible story. Before she could move, I heard it. A low, guttural growl of agony. It shook the stone around us. It came from the king's personal chambers, close by. It sounded like pure, raw suffering. The old woman's eyes filled with despair. "He carries so much pain," she murmured, "more than any mortal should." My head swam. The king was in agony. And my ancient blood, my mark. It seemed to be the key. What did she mean? Past failures. Was I doomed to fail too? The first lesson in balance. The castle halls, once a quiet prison, now felt like a grand schoolroom. And just like that, my life changed again. Instead of hiding, I was learning. The king, still masked, started to teach me about his power. It wasn't simple. It was like trying to hold lightning. He showed me how to sense the raw energy that buzzed around him, how it pushed against his mask, always trying to break free. My mark pulsed with a constant hum, my very blood feeling the push and pull of his immense force. What followed were agonizing hours of training. We stood in a hidden chamber, deep below the castle, away from all eyes. He would extend a hand, glowing faintly, and the air would thicken, humming with that dangerous ozone scent. My job was to meet his power with my own, not with brute force, but with balance. My Omega blood, now awake, felt like a tuning fork, resonating with his chaotic energy. I'd reach out, my fingers tracing the air where his power swirled. It was like trying to catch smoke. I had to feel its flow, its rhythm, its heat, then softly, gently, guide it. It was incredibly hard. My muscles ached, my mind spun, my mark would throb, sometimes burning hot, sometimes chilling cold. On the other hand, there were times when his power would flare. A sudden spark, too much. He'd let out a low growl, a sound of pure frustration, and a nearby stone would crack. Or a metal torch sconce would twist. He would flinch, his shoulders slumping, because he knew his lack of control was dangerous. I felt his shame, his guilt, through our bond. It was a heavy weight. "It's all right," I'd whisper, though my own voice trembled. "We'll get it." My goal was to learn, to tame this wildness, because our lives and the world itself depended on it. Moments later, I realized something. His mask wasn't just to hide his face, it was part of the containment. His power was so vast, so alive, that it constantly strained against its prison. The mask was a constant drain on his very being. It made him tired. It kept him alone. And because of that, a new kind of determination bloomed in my chest. I wouldn't just learn. I would master this. I would be his anchor. Deep down, I knew the truth. This was my purpose. Yet, unseen by us, a shadow lingered. A single eye, belonging to a spy for the ambitious Lord Valerius, watched from a hidden slit in the wall, confirming my unexpected influence. It was a secret I didn't know I was sharing. The training continued, hard and demanding. Each session pulled us closer. And then, the world exploded. It was late night. A shrill alarm sliced through the castle's quiet hum. The air filled with the clash of steel, the shouts of guards, and the sharp, coppery scent of fresh blood. The castle itself seemed to tremble. What's worse, the attack wasn't from outside. It was from within. Lord Valerius, a man with a smile as false as his loyalty, had struck. He was a distant cousin of the king, always hungry for more power. He wanted the throne. He wanted the king's power. Soon after, I heard the king's battle cry, a deep, resonant sound that made the very air vibrate. It was raw, primal. He moved like a whirlwind in the chaos, his power a visible force, shattering swords, knocking men aside like dolls. His mask, usually so stoic, vibrated violently. But then, a cruel trick. Valerius, armed with a strange, glowing blade, struck. The blade didn't aim for the king's heart. No, it aimed for his face. And just like that, with a sickening crack, the mask exploded into fragments of dark metal and shimmering magic. My breath caught. Time stood still. There was no monster. There was no ugly, twisted face. Instead, pure light. The king's face was revealed. Not hideous, but otherworldly. It was etched with luminous, pulsating runes that glowed like molten gold. They moved and shifted beneath his skin, living patterns of power. His eyes, the same golden eyes from my visions, now burning with raw, untamed force, locked onto mine. He was beautiful and terrifying. His power, no longer held back by the mask, roared. It was a tempest of energy. It threw soldiers, both friend and foe, against the walls. My mark burned, trying to pull his power back, because it was too much. In that moment, I understood. The mask wasn't just a prison, it was a dam, and now the dam was broken. I felt his wildness, his rage, his absolute crushing power. My Omega instinct screamed at me to soothe him, to hold him, to anchor him. He was losing control. The castle groaned. I had to act. I pushed forward, not thinking. My body moved on instinct. My hand reached for his. I needed to help him. I needed to save him from himself. Valerius, seeing the king's power spiral, let out a triumphant cackle. "He's lost! The monster consumes himself!" And just like that, he vanished, leaving behind a bleeding, loyal guard. The true cost of power. The air after the fight tasted of ozone and raw power. The king stood, unmasked, his face a canvas of luminous runes that pulsed with barely contained energy. My hand still rested on his, my touch the only thing keeping his power from shattering the very stone we stood on. His golden eyes, now fully visible, met mine. They held a profound loneliness, a centuries-deep well of pain that made my chest ache. Truth be told, I wanted to reach out, to smooth away the sadness I felt through our bond. "The mask," I whispered, my voice rough. It held it back. He nodded, a slow, weary movement. "My ancestors, they forged it, to contain the primordial force. It is our legacy." His voice was deep, a low rumble that vibrated through me, not rough like a growl, but smooth like ancient stone. "Every alpha of my line bears this, the power, the burden." He turned, walking slowly to a shattered window, looking out at the night. "My love, it unlocks it. Emotions, they make the force surge." He spoke of a time long ago, a personal tragedy. His young sister, bright and innocent. He had loved her fiercely. And just like that, in a moment of pure, overwhelming affection, his power had surged, uncontrolled. It hadn't killed her instantly. No, it had merely withered her, slowly. Her laughter faded, her skin turned to ash. He watched her fade, day by day, knowing he had caused it. Because his heart had felt too much. My breath caught, the cruelty of it. To be condemned to loneliness because love was destruction. My Omega empathy felt every tremor of his guilt. It was a raw, searing pain. You thought your love would destroy me." My voice trembled. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I knew. His eyes, when they met mine, held that same terror. He had believed his own existence was a curse. "It doesn't have to be," I insisted, stepping closer. "My ancient blood. The old woman. She spoke of balance, of anchors." I remembered the scrolls, the scenes of Omegas calming the chaos. We are meant to complete each other, not destroy. My heart pounded. This was it. The point of no return. I was all in. This was not just about survival anymore. This was about destiny. His fate. My fate. Our fate. As the truth unraveled, a new, clear vision flashed through my mind. Not the chaotic scenes of the past, but a looming image of the Great Conjunction. It was coming, and the antagonist's shadowy influence pulsed around it. We were out of time. The first lesson in balance. The castle halls, once a quiet prison, now felt like a grand schoolroom. And just like that, my life changed again. Instead of hiding, I was learning. The king, still masked, started to teach me about his power. It wasn't simple. It was like trying to hold lightning. He showed me how to sense the raw energy that buzzed around him, how it pushed against his mask, always trying to break free. My mark pulsed with a constant hum. My very blood felt the push and pull of his immense force. What followed were agonizing hours of training. We stood in a hidden chamber, deep below the castle, away from all eyes. He would extend a hand, glowing faintly, and the air would thicken, humming with that dangerous ozone scent. My job was to meet his power with my own, not with brute force, but with balance. My Omega blood, now awake, felt like a tuning fork, resonating with his chaotic energy. I'd reach out, my fingers tracing the air where his power swirled. It was like trying to catch smoke. I had to feel its flow, its rhythm, its heat. Then softly, gently, guide it. It was incredibly hard. My muscles ached. My mind spun. My mark would throb, sometimes burning hot, sometimes chilling cold. On the other hand, there were times when his power would flare. A sudden spark. Too much. He'd let out a low growl, a sound of pure frustration, and a nearby stone would crack or a metal torch sconce would twist. He would flinch, his shoulders slumping, because he knew his lack of control was dangerous. I felt his shame, his guilt, through our bond. It was a heavy weight. "It's all right," I'd whisper, though my own voice trembled. "We'll get it." My goal was to learn, to tame this wildness, because our lives and the world itself depended on it. Moments later, I realized something. His mask wasn't just to hide his face, it was part of the containment. His power was so vast, so alive that it constantly strained against its prison. The mask was a constant drain on his very being. It made him tired. It kept him alone. And because of that, a new kind of determination bloomed in my chest. I wouldn't just learn, I would master this. I would be his anchor. Deep down, I knew the truth. This was my purpose. Yet, unseen by us, a shadow lingered. A single eye belonging to a spy for the ambitious Lord Valerius watched from a hidden slit in the wall, confirming my unexpected influence. It was a secret I didn't know I was sharing. The training continued, hard and demanding. Each session pulled us closer. And then, the world exploded. It was late night. A shrill alarm sliced through the castle's quiet hum, the air filled with the clash of steel, the shouts of guards, and the sharp, coppery scent of fresh blood. The castle itself seemed to tremble. What's worse, the attack wasn't from outside. It was from within. Lord Valerius, a man with a smile as false as his loyalty, had struck. He was a distant cousin of the king, always hungry for more power. He wanted the throne. He wanted the king's power. Soon after, I heard the king's battle cry, a deep, resonant sound that made the very air vibrate. It was raw, primal. He moved like a whirlwind in the chaos, his power a visible force, shattering swords, knocking men aside like dolls. His mask, usually so stoic, vibrated violently. But then, a cruel trick. Valerius, armed with a strange, glowing blade, struck. The blade didn't aim for the king's heart. No, it aimed for his face. And just like that, with a sickening crack, the mask exploded into fragments of dark metal and shimmering magic. My breath caught. Time stood still. There was no monster. There was no ugly, twisted face. Instead, pure light. The king's face was revealed, not hideous, but otherworldly. It was etched with luminous, pulsating runes that glowed like molten gold. They moved and shifted beneath his skin, living patterns of power. His eyes, the same golden eyes from my visions, now burning with raw, untamed force, locked onto mine. He was beautiful and terrifying. His power, no longer held back by the mask, roared. It was a tempest of energy. It threw soldiers, both friend and foe, against the walls. My mark burned, trying to pull his power back, because it was too much. In that moment, I understood. The mask wasn't just a prison. It was a dam. And now, the dam was broken. I felt his wildness, his rage, his absolute crushing power. My Omega instincts screamed at me to soothe him, to hold him, to anchor him. He was losing control. The castle groaned. I had to act. I pushed forward, not thinking. My body moved on instinct. My hand reached for his. I needed to help him. I needed to save him from himself. Valerius, seeing the king's power spiral, let out a triumphant cackle. He's lost! The monster consumes himself! And just like that, he vanished, leaving behind a bleeding, loyal guard. The true cost of power. The air after the fight tasted of ozone and raw power. The king stood, unmasked, his face a canvas of luminous runes that pulsed with barely contained energy. My hand still rested on his, my touch the only thing keeping his power from shattering the very stone we stood on. His golden eyes, now fully visible, met mine. They held a profound loneliness, a centuries-deep well of pain that made my chest ache. Truth be told, I wanted to reach out, to smooth away the sadness I felt through our bond. "The mask," I whispered. my voice rough. It held it back. He nodded, a slow, weary movement. My ancestors, they forged it, to contain the primordial force. It is our legacy. His voice was deep, a low rumble that vibrated through me, not rough like a growl, but smooth like ancient stone. Every alpha of my line bears this. The power, the burden. He turned, walking slowly to a shattered window, looking out at the night. My love, it unlocks it. Emotions, they make the force surge. He spoke of a time long ago, a personal tragedy. His young sister, bright and innocent. He had loved her fiercely. And just like that, in a moment of pure, overwhelming affection, his power had surged uncontrolled. It hadn't killed her instantly. No, it had merely withered her. Slowly. Her laughter faded. Her skin turned to ash. He watched her fade, day by day, knowing he had caused it. Because his heart had felt too much. My breath caught. The cruelty of it. To be condemned to loneliness because love was destruction. My Omega empathy felt every tremor of his guilt. It was a raw, searing pain. You thought your love would destroy me. My voice trembled. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I knew. His eyes, when they met mine, held that same terror. He had believed his own existence was a curse. It doesn't have to be, I insisted, stepping closer. My ancient blood. The old woman, she spoke of balance, of anchors. I remembered the scrolls, the scenes of Omegas calming the chaos. We are meant to complete each other, not destroy. My heart pounded. This was it, the point of no return. I was all in. This was not just about survival anymore. This was about destiny, his fate, my fate, our fate. As the truth unraveled, a new clear vision flashed through my mind. Not the chaotic scenes of the past, but a looming image of the great conjunction. It was coming, and the antagonist's shadowy influence pulsed around it. We were out of time. The antagonist's triumph. The fragile peace we built shattered. Just like that, the air itself screamed. And then, Valerius struck again. This time, his attack was colder, more cruel. It wasn't just brute force. No, it was calculated. What followed was a wave of pure, dark magic that slammed into the castle's defenses. It felt like a punch to my very soul. I gasped, my Omega senses screaming as the energy surged. Simultaneously, our bond pulsed with raw pain. Soon after, a terrified scream echoed from the deeper dungeons. My heart sank. Kyle. No. It wasn't Kale. It was the old woman, the quiet, wise servant who had warned me. She was captured. Valerius wanted to cut us off, to isolate us. Not only that, he targeted the ancient archives, the place where all the old prophecies and lore were kept, because he wanted to destroy our history, to make us blind. A sickening wave of power, colder than anything I'd felt, exploded from the archives. The very stone groaned. More importantly, Valerius's magic was twisting our symbiotic link. It felt like a sharp, cold wedge being driven between my soul and the king's. The king let out a guttural roar, a sound of pure agony. His luminous runes, usually a steady glow, flickered wildly, like a candle in a gale. His power, no longer anchored by my full influence, surged out of control. It was a terrifying tempest. Walls cracked, air sparked. The castle itself groaned under the strain. He was fighting it. Oh, how he fought. But the disruption to our bond, it was too much. Instead, the power lashed out. Random bursts of energy slammed into innocent parts of the castle, sending servants scattering, causing parts of the roof to collapse with deafening crashes. Panic, raw and animalistic, swept through the remaining loyalists. Because of that, their fear, their terror of the king's uncontrolled power fed the chaos. My chest ached. I could feel his shame, his self-loathing, mixing with the uncontrolled power. He was being forced to hurt his own people. What's worse, the more he fought it, the more chaotic it seemed to become. Eventually, he let out a frustrated, defeated howl. His power, still raging, retreated. He was forced back. He fled into the deepest parts of his fortress, visible even now as a chaotic, flickering light. He was weakened, overwhelmed. As the dust settled, I looked upon the destruction. My heart felt like a heavy stone, the weight of what our failure, or his lack of control, could mean for the innocent. We were losing. And just like that, a cold despair began to seep into my bones, the weight of history. The air in the castle hung heavy with the smell of ozone, ash, and fear. My own fear. What followed was an urgent meeting with the few loyal captains left. But even their faces were grim. Valerius hadn't just attacked the castle. He had attacked our very hearts. Soon after, his agents, using magic and lies, spread his words like poison through the city. "The king is a monster," they cried. "His power is untamed. He killed his own sister. And the Omega, his consort, she only makes it worse. She fuels his madness." More importantly, Valerius didn't just lie. He showed proof. He displayed ancient, distorted prophecies, twisted words from old texts. He even showed illusions of past Alpha-Omega pairs from the king's lineage who had failed, causing widespread skepticism and fear among the king's own people. They were not just stories, they were nightmares. And just like that, the people of the kingdom, already afraid, turned against us. Their fear was a tangible thing, a cold wave that crashed against my Omega senses. Truth be told, their skepticism was reasonable. Why would anyone believe in a masked monster and his newly revealed Omega? They had witnessed the damage. They felt the terror. Because of that, a loyal advisor, an older beta named Thane, stepped forward during our grim meeting. His face was etched with sorrow. "My king," he said, his voice trembling. "The people. They are afraid. They demand answers. They whisper of a choice, a different ruler." His eyes, filled with regret, met mine. "They say the Omega's presence only amplifies the chaos." He looked away, his loyalty warring with his fear. It was a betrayal, a stab to my heart. The king let out a low, defeated sigh. His luminous runes, usually so vibrant, seemed to dim on his face. He was consumed by self-doubt, by guilt. His mind was a storm of despair, and I felt every agonizing thought through our bond. It is my fault. All my fault. My own resolve wavered. Was the old woman wrong? Was I truly a curse? Was my ancient blood simply a trigger for destruction? My chest ached with the weight of it all. We were losing the battle not just in the castle, but in the hearts of the people. And just like that, with no other option, we had to retreat. We fled, not as rulers, but as hunted fugitives. We hid ourselves in a secret ancient chamber, deep beneath the oldest part of the castle, because it was the only place our bond felt truly safe from the outside world's crushing pressure. Dark night of the soul. The hidden chamber was cold. Stone walls, damp and unyielding, pressed in on us. It was a place of shadows. And just like that, hope felt very far away. My stomach was a tight knot of despair. Outside, the sounds of search parties echoed. Inside, the silence roared. My mark pulsed with a dull ache, a constant reminder of our shared misery. My Omega senses, usually a conduit to the world, now only fed me the king's crushing guilt. He sat on the cold floor, his head bowed, his luminous face dimmed. His power, still immense, felt like a heavy, suffocating blanket around him, not a source of strength. "It's the only way," he murmured, his voice raw, barely a whisper. "I must seal myself away, forever." My heart skipped a beat. To save them, to save you. His golden eyes, filled with an ancient sorrow, met mine. "My love, it is poison. It destroys. I can't risk it again. Not after my sister. Not after this." He was talking about self-sacrifice, about letting himself be sealed in a void alone, for all time, because he believed his existence was a curse. My breath caught. A cold dread washed over me. He was giving up. And just like that, the fear I had fought for so long, my deepest internal flaw, surged. I'm a burden. My blood is a curse. I felt tiny, powerless, just like the day I was sold. I had always tried to be invisible, to survive by not fighting. Was this where it led? To another surrender? My vision blurred with unshed tears. Was my ancient blood truly a gift, or just a trigger for endless heartbreak? Was my love for him selfish, knowing the catastrophic stakes? Truth be told, the answers felt impossible. The vastness of the king's power, the weight of his past failures, the world's despair, it all crashed down on me. I thought of Kale, my aunt, my uncle. Was their sacrifice pointless? Would my very existence condemn them all? The goal seemed utterly impossible. All was lost. My voice trembled. Is this it? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Is this how it ends? The space between us burned with unspoken grief. He offered no comfort, only resignation. In the stillness that followed, his single tear, bright like liquid starlight on his glowing cheek, felt colder than any ice. His power shimmered, a silent promise of his terrible plan. His heart ached. My soul echoed it. What hope did we have left? The cold of the hidden chamber still seeped into my bones, and just like that, the despair from moments ago threatened to swallow me whole. My mark pulsed with a dull ache, a constant reminder of our shared misery. Then, as the silence stretched, a whisper. It wasn't the king's voice. No, it was softer, older. A familiar scent, like crushed lavender and ancient stone, filled my senses. What followed was a wave of pure, clear light, not from a torch, but from deep within my own mind. My vision exploded. I saw her, an Omega woman, luminous and calm, her face serene, even as immense, chaotic energy swirled around her. She was from my bloodline, an ancestor. She wasn't fighting the power, no. She was dancing with it, weaving it. She showed me not just how to contain, but how to create, how to build. The power wasn't just destructive. It held the blueprint for life. It was a force for healing, for balance. Not only that, she showed me a specific technique, a subtle manipulation of the cosmic energy that made it sing, not roar. It was the missing piece, the true potential of our combined, harmonized power. The vision faded, leaving me breathless. My despair vanished, replaced by a surge of fiery conviction. Deep down, I knew the truth. This was it. This was the way. Because of that, my heart pounded with a new rhythm. Hope. I looked at the king, his luminous face still etched with the shadows of his guilt. His golden eyes were filled with ancient sorrow. He was still ready to sacrifice everything. But now, he wouldn't have to. I reached for him. My fingers, steady now, found his hand. His power, usually a heavy hum, felt lighter under my touch, because my new knowledge was already easing the strain. My voice, clear and strong, filled the small chamber. "We have it," I said, a new kind of confidence in my tone. "We don't contain it, we guide it, we don't just stop the destruction, we create." I explained the vision, the ancestral dance, the promise of new life. His golden eyes widened, mirroring my own newfound determination. His gaze searched mine, raw and intense, and just like that, a flicker of something ancient and powerful, not fear, but hope, bloomed in his eyes. His hand, once burdened, squeezed mine. The air in the hidden chamber crackled with our shared understanding. His luminous face, usually a canvas of despair, now held a fierce, questioning hope. "Creation, not just containment?" he murmured, his voice a low, rumbling inquiry. He had carried this burden for so long, for lifetimes, and just like that, I knew he needed me to truly believe it. "Yes," I insisted, my grip firm on his hand. Our ancestors, they didn't just survive, they thrived. There were stories I heard as a child whispered by the elders about times of great prosperity under their balanced rule. But then, the cataclysm came. The power broke. They lost the key. I told him about the subtle shift, the weaving motion in the vision, not a fight against the power, but a dance with it. It's about balance, King, not just raw force. My voice, though soft, held the weight of ancient wisdom, because I saw it. I felt it. What followed was intense. We spent hours, maybe even a day in that hidden chamber. We talked, we planned. I explained the precise ways my Omega blood could anchor his primordial force, turning its chaos into harmony. He listened, really listened. His resistance, his ingrained fear, slowly melted away, replaced by a focused resolve. It was a beautiful thing to see. He gave me specific details about his power, about its flow, about the weaknesses Valerius might exploit. We drew diagrams in the dust on the floor, lines of power weaving, mirroring the patterns in my vision. We named the specific nexus point Valerius was heading for. It was an ancient, sacred place. More importantly, our minds were becoming one. Our mark pulsed with a new, vibrant energy, a silent hum of understanding that flowed between us. We didn't need words. We felt each other's thoughts. We were truly a united front. And just like that, a new kind of love bloomed between us. Not just born of fate, but of shared purpose. A love that was fierce and absolute. Eventually, we emerged from the hidden chamber. The king, unmasked, stood before his remaining loyalists. His luminous face was a beacon of both power and hope. "My people," he began, his voice resonating with newfound authority. "The age of fear ends. The true conjunction comes. And my queen, Aria, will stand by my side." He presented me not as a consort, but as his equal, his partner in destiny. Their surprised faces shifted to awe. Hope, fragile but potent, began to blossom in their eyes. The race to destiny. The air outside the hidden chamber felt different now, lighter, sharper. And just like that, we moved. Our plan was simple, direct. We had to get to the ancient nexus before Valerius, because if he completed his corrupted conjunction there, our world would be consumed. The king, his luminous face stern with purpose, led the way. His power, still immense, now felt controlled, flowing around him like a protective cloak. My mark thrummed in unison, a constant, steady beat. Soon after, we were racing through the castle's secret passages. Our remaining loyalists, a small but fiercely determined band, moved with us. Their faces were grim, but their eyes held a new fire, the spark of hope we had ignited. They trusted us. That truth felt like a heavy weight, a sacred promise. Meanwhile, Valerius's forces were everywhere. We faced constant clashes. Shadows danced between them. His soldiers, twisted by his dark magic, attacked with feral screams. The king fought with devastating grace, his glowing runes a blur of light. My Omega instincts surged. I moved with him, a second shadow, anticipating his every move. What followed were intense bursts of battle. I wasn't just a bystander, no. I was his anchor. As the king unleashed his raw power, I would instinctively channel it, guiding it, pulling it back from the edge of chaos. My touch, my presence, kept him focused, kept him balanced. It was a dangerous dance. With every heartbeat, we became more synchronized. It was like our bodies remembered him from before. And just like that, our bond pulsed with raw, living energy. We were two halves of one powerful whole. Truth be told, Valerius's magic was stronger than we expected. He had set traps. He had corrupted the very earth around the nexus. The ground under our feet seemed to twist, trying to swallow us whole. But we pushed through, because we had to. Our shared goal burned bright. What's worse, the air grew thick with crackling energy. It was Valerius's corrupted conjunction, already beginning. The sky darkened above the distant nexus, churning with sickly green and purple clouds. We burst out of the final tunnel, and just like that, we were there. The nexus. An ancient, ruined temple, pulsating with unstable power. Valerius stood in the center, his arms raised, a dark, triumphant figure. Around him, the corrupted conjunction raged, a maelstrom of destructive energy. Time seemed to stand still. He was almost done, and just like that, our final confrontation had begun. The nexus hummed, not the gentle hum of our balanced bond, but a high-pitched, angry whine that vibrated in my teeth. And just like that, we were there. Valerius stood in the center of the ruined temple, his arms raised to the churning, sickly green sky. His face was twisted with dark triumph. Around him, the corrupted conjunction raged, a maelstrom of destructive energy. It tore at the very air, sucking the light, warping reality. My heart hammered against my ribs, a war drum. He's almost done. Soon after, the king roared, a sound that was both alpha command and pure, untamed power. He lunged, a luminous blur against Valerius's darkness. Their powers clashed. Thunder rolled where their energies met. Valerius shrieked, a high, piercing sound. He unleashed corrupted magic, dark tendrils wrapping around the king. The king fought back, his golden runes burning brighter, pushing the darkness away. But his power, immense as it was, still threatened to break free, to become the chaos it was meant to contain. He was fighting his own nature, and just like that, I knew I had to act. What followed was a deep breath. My omega blood sang in my veins, calling to the primordial force. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. I stepped into the heart of the storm, into the swirling chaos between the king and Valerius. The raw energy slammed into me, but it didn't consume me. No, it recognized me. As if fate demanded it, my body moved on instinct. I extended my hands, palms open. My mark burned, a searing, beautiful heat. And just like that, a white gold light erupted from me, meeting the king's luminous power. The king met my gaze, his golden eyes filled with fierce resolve, locked onto mine. He understood. Our hands clasped, flesh against flesh. The connection was immediate, overwhelming. Our powers surged, meeting each other, weaving together, not fighting, but dancing. I remembered the ancestors' vision, the subtle weaving, the precise manipulation. I pulled, I pushed, I twisted the energy, my omega essence guiding his alpha force. The chaotic maelstrom began to change. The sickly green faded, the air purified. The terrifying roar softened into a powerful, harmonious hum. Valerius shrieked. His dark magic unraveled around him, unable to withstand the pure, balanced force. He withered, screamed, and then, with a final, desperate gasp, he dissolved into ash, scattered by the winds of our combined power. The great surge of light swelled, then gently, like a sigh, faded into a soft, golden glow that settled over the nexus. The conjunction was complete. We had saved it. And just like that, the world was ours, the first breath of peace. The silence that followed was deafening, but it wasn't the cold, empty silence of the castle or the terrified silence of the auction. No. This was a peaceful silence. It tasted of clean air, of fresh rain on warm earth, of promise. And just like that, I felt my body sag with relief. My heart hammered, but it was a steady, strong beat. The king, his luminous face now serene, stood beside me. We were exhausted, but triumphant. Our bond, once a source of terror, now pulsed with warmth, a gentle hum of connection that vibrated between us. Soon after, a few brave loyalists, those who had fought by our side, emerged from the shadows. Their faces were streaked with dirt and exhaustion, but their eyes were wide with awe. They looked at the king, unmasked, radiant with controlled power. Then, their gaze shifted to me, to us. They knelt, not in fear, no. They knelt in respect, in gratitude. It was a humbling sight. I felt their relief, their soaring hope, through my omega senses. It was a symphony of positive emotions, a stark contrast to the despair I'd so often felt. What followed was the tangible proof of our success. The land around the nexus, scarred and desolate moments ago, began to heal. The soil turned dark and rich. Small green sprouts pushed through the cracked earth. Flowers bloomed, their colors vibrant and pure. The air smelled crisp, like a morning in spring. The lingering scent of ozone from the cataclysm was gone, replaced by the sweet scent of new life. It was beautiful, truly beautiful. Because of that, a wave of profound joy washed over me. We hadn't just stopped destruction, we had created life. More importantly, the old woman, the wise servant, emerged from a hidden alcove, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She looked at us, her gaze full of a knowing pride. "The prophecy," she whispered, her voice like soft wind. "It is fulfilled. The balance is restored." Her words resonated deep within me. It confirmed everything. My ancient blood, his cosmic power, our fated bond. It was all real, and it was all for this. The king gently squeezed my hand, his golden eyes filled with an unspoken emotion that spoke louder than any words. It was love, pure, unburdened, and just like that, I knew we had earned this peace. The reign of balance months passed. The castle, once a place of shadows and fear, now buzzed with life. And just like that, it felt like home. We ruled, the king and I, side by side. It wasn't just his kingdom anymore. It was our kingdom. Our reign was one of balance. His immense power, now perfectly anchored by my omega essence, flowed freely, nurturing the land. The luminous runes on his face no longer pulsed with chaotic energy. No. They glowed with a soft, benevolent light, a symbol of strength and harmony. I was no longer the hidden omega, shrinking from attention. Instead, I stood tall. My omega empathy, once a painful burden, became my strength. I used it to connect with our people, to understand their needs, their hopes, their fears. I used my ancient wisdom, gleaned from my visions and the scrolls, to guide our laws, to help shape a world where all were valued. My voice, once trembling, now carried authority. Because of that, the kingdom thrived. What followed was a golden age. The scars of the past, both on the land and in the hearts of the people, slowly healed. More importantly, our bond, the one that used to pulse with danger, was now a constant, gentle hum of pure connection. It was a silent conversation between our souls. His scent, once terrifying, was now my comfort, my home. We walked the castle gardens, hand in hand, often just enjoying the quiet peace. My mark tingled faintly, a warm reassurance of our unbreakable link. Sometimes, in the quiet evenings, he would tell me stories of his long life, stories of his loneliness, but also stories of the hopes of his ancestors for this very moment. He held nothing back. And just like that, our love grew deeper, richer, like old wine. "Are you happy, my queen?" he asked me one evening, his voice a low rumble as we watched the sunset paint the sky in fiery colors. He kissed my hand. The question was unnecessary. I simply looked at him, his luminous face serene, and smiled. My soul answered. Epilogue. A year, maybe two, had gently folded into the tapestry of our reign. The kingdom flourished, the land sang with life, and just like that, our story continued. My mark, usually a warm hum, now pulsed with a new, vibrant rhythm. It was a life, a tiny, precious spark growing within me. Our child. I stood by the window, my hand resting on my swollen belly. The king came up behind me, his arms wrapping around me, his familiar scent a comforting embrace. His hand, warm and strong, covered mine. He felt the flutter. His luminous eyes softened, a joy so profound, it stole my breath. This child wasn't just ours. No. This child was the living embodiment of balance, of harmony. Their tiny heartbeat resonated with a beautiful, stable echo of both our combined powers. It was a new lineage, not burdened by the past, but empowered by it. "A new beginning," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. I leaned into his strength, looking out at the thriving kingdom. Fields of green stretched to the horizon, happy faces, laughter, and the scent of peace drifted up to us. We had transcended destruction. We had forged a love powerful enough to reshape existence. And just like that, our story, once marked by fear, was now etched with endless hope. Thank you so much for watching this video. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed what you saw, we've got a whole library of other videos packed with more great content just like this waiting for you on our channel. So, why not dive into another one right now? And hey, if you want to make sure you don't miss out on our next upload, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We'd love to have you join our community and see you in the next video. Thanks again,